We're here with our final round. After a long day, we're down to our top two duelists. We have Yorgos Papazoglou with Prank Kids versus Michalis Hans Andreas with Shaddoll Dogmatika. And I have to say, this matchup is pretty much favored for the Dogmatika player because Shaddoll's Winda, I think, it's just such a good card against Prank Kids. To be honest, the deck cannot deal with it unless it has hard drawn a direct way to deal with it, or it fuses right away, but then again, it's going to lose the two materials for the special summons, so it's very behind even if it deals with Winda. So I'm interested to see how these matchups will go. And honestly, I'm surprised that we didn't see any Sword Souls in the final round because they did have a lot of representation. But yeah, these two decks, some decks that people think that are not as powerful as others right now, especially Prank Kids. After the ban list, people have completely slept on it since Meowmo went to 1. But we'll see how this will go. The deck has been performing really well the whole day, so let's see how this goes. So we have the die roll, we have 2, and we have 5. So I'm pretty sure the Prank Kids player is going to go first, because this is huge for the deck, so it doesn't have to face a Winda. So it's going to set up its own board before Winda has a chance to come out. So yep, let's see. We have the Lampsies. The deck, even after the ban list, turn 1 still pretty much can do the exact same thing. The limiting of Meowmu doesn't affect it turn 1, it affects the follow-up plays, and the deck has to be very careful on when it banishes this card, or if it banishes this card at all, or just decides to put it back in the deck with pranks so you can use it again, because if you lose this card completely, then you're basically not going to have the free follow-up, and you are going to have to fusion summon immediately if you want to go for the full play again. But now with Fancy, he's going to Doodle, pretty standard stuff. He's going to search, he's going to summon. I think the deck, if it goes first, it has a really good chance to fight, just because it can already get all of its cards it wants. So even after a Winda drops the field, if you have access to Pandemonium and some fusion materials, you don't really care, because you have searched the cards you need to deal with Winda immediately. It's the problem when you have to hard draw those cards going second without being able to search them with Doodle. He sends the pranks to the grave, pretty standard. Being able to retrieve that card is extremely important for the grind game, because if you don't shuffle all those cards back every single turn, especially the Meowmu, if you don't want to Raigeki twice, then you have to get those cards in order to be able to grind. Otherwise, you're going to fall completely behind, since the Shaddoll Dogmatika Invoked deck is a deck that can grind very well, especially with the Invoked engine, being able to recycle Alistair every single turn. He activates the pranks, dropping the Lampsies, get a token. And he's going to continue doing his stuff. Now, the Raigeki effect, it's not the most optimal against the deck like Invoked, but it's not terrible either. It could be better, but it could be worse. He sets 2 after summoning for Bark. And that's the turn. Now, let's see what happens. Now, the cool thing is that Shaddoll Fusion is not the best card against this deck, because you can just chain your Bark, and then you don't have an extra deck monster on the field anymore, so your opponent has to fusion some from the hand if possible. So he has to be very careful when or if he activates this card at all. And one of the set cards is definitely Pandemonium. He activates Prosperity. Let's see if he digs for 3 or 6, most likely 6. But again, he might want to keep some resources. Yeah, he seems to be going only for 3. Because in a deck against Prank Kids, like, you have to grind a lot, so you have to keep as many resources as possible. He reveals Nibiru, Tactics, and Ash. So nothing to get his engine going, but decent cards overall. Nibiru is really good against Prank Kids even after turn 1, because the deck, unless it's careful, it does spam a lot. But if they know you have it, then they can definitely play around it, so he's going for the talents. He's going to try to dig through his deck when your opponent activates something like a monster effect, which he's definitely going to do. And Nadir is a really good card. It's not the card you really want to start to, because you get locked from your other 2 engines right now, but it's a really good card overall now. Maybe he didn't have access to Alistair or the Shaddoll Fusion or something like that. He sends Titanic Lad and searches Ecclesia, which is going to give him 2 searches, 1 now and 1 in the end phase. He summons Ecclesia. She gets impermed, so no access to punishment. But he chains Cross out, so he's going to banish his own imperm, and Ecclesia is going to resolve. So he's going to search most likely for punishment now and for Fluid Release in the end phase. No, he searched for Maximus, so he's going all in with this. So he doesn't care about the end phase search now, he just wants to basically go for as much as possible during this turn. Now Maximus is a really good card because it's going to get you access to your Schism, which is going to get you winner during your opponent's turn, and unless the Prankage player can deal with it immediately, then he's going to have really big trouble. He's considering his plays here, and he banishes Titanic Light for Maximus. And now both players were going to send 2 monsters from the extra deck to the graveyard. He sends Apkalone and Construct, and the Prankage player is going to send Rocket and something else. The Prankage deck doesn't really mind about that because you can just shuffle the monsters you send to the graveyard back into the deck during the end phase with Pranks, so that's completely fine, but Apkalone is going to get the search. He's going to get Schism. Now, if this card gets online and it actually sticks on the field for too long, then that's really big trouble for the Prankage deck. Not just because of Winda, but the deck could just do so much if this card gets resolved multiple times throughout a game. And he discards the Dasher. So this reveals to his opponent that he's playing the Destiny Hero package as well, with Destroyer Phoenix Enforcer, which is something that we've seen a lot today in so many different decks. But it looks like he is not going to be able to use that again during this duel because he discarded the Dasher. He was locked from his extra deck with he couldn't summon Anaconda because of Nadir anyway, so he wouldn't be able to do it this turn. So he decided to give up on it completely for the entire duel. So that's it. Now let's see how much damage this Schism can do. He's activating Pandemonium. He chains Imperm on the Bark, and this negates Pandemonium because it's in the same column. He normal summons Lampsies. I think this is where Winda Will is going to drop, yeah, because you just make your opponent think twice before doing anything. Now, this is where things get difficult, because Pandemonium was negated, and now he doesn't have a way to get it back very easily. Unless he has another way to fuse, then this is going to be really big, because he also sent his Unicorn to the graveyard with Maximus, so he doesn't have an out to Winda right now. So he attacks with Lampsies. And this sends Winda to the grave because of Bark. So yep, this was pretty easy. He discards Roxy's to summon a token with Pranks. And here where the second doodle is going to come to play. He's going to get another search. Now, he still hasn't dealt with Schism, which, even though he dealt with Winda, Schism is going to give him so many more monsters throughout this duel, unless he doesn't play any other, which I would be surprised if he didn't, because this card is so good not to play more monsters in the extra deck for. But maybe he doesn't, we'll have to wait and see. I think discarding this Dasher is gonna hurt him throughout the game because Destroyer Phoenix Enforcer is a card that can do so much, especially in a grind game like this. And it doesn't look like this game is going to be very short. Place, searching another Dropsies. Maybe he's trying to set up for a Totally Awesome. He's gonna Tribute. Get back 2 cards. Getting back Pandemonium. And the Lampsies. Sets 1. And the end phase Pranks will get back 3 cards and draw 1. Now, getting access to the Invocation deck is going to be really crucial, otherwise this game is not going to be fun. For him, at least. And the Meowmoo is still in the graveyard, so whenever he wants, he can put it back, and then he can be able to do all those stuff. But as long as he has access to Pandemonium, he doesn't really need to. Let's see what he picked up. He's thinking a lot, so it doesn't seem like it was something too good. Probably not part of the invocation. And he scoops it up. It looks like he was not able to get through his deck quick enough in order to get the cards he needed. And now this was it. But for game 2, he's going to get to go first, which is going to be huge, unless the side deck comes in clutch for the Prankids player. Because like I said before, Wind at turn 1 against Prankids is really strong. For other side options, Lancia, really good card against the Invoked Shaddoll deck. Not only does it shut down the Invoked engine, but it shuts down Maximus, which is the easiest way to get to Winda turn 1, because getting to a Shaddoll monster, a Dark monster, and a Shaddoll fusion going first is not very consistent when you're not playing a more dedicated Shaddoll deck. But regardless of who wins, a deck that is not considered to be tier 1 is going to win this event, which is really cool. I was expecting Sword Souls and Tri-Brigade to be like absolute dominant, and they were, but they didn't make it to the finals, which is really cool. Sword Soul is a deck that a lot of people are hyping, and for good reason. The deck is really strong, but like we've seen here, this format, if you know what your deck is doing, if you can deck build correctly, and you're playing a good enough deck, which both of these decks are, then you can definitely pick up a win, regardless of who wins here. They're done siding, and now they're shuffling up. Let's see if we can get to a game 3, because with an Invoked Shaddoll deck going first, it's going to be really huge. He activates Meltdown, pretty good start. Now his deck is gonna roll. Just this card is enough to give him access to Mechaba because of Artemis. He summons the Alistair, and it gets Veilered. Now, does he have the hard-drawn invocation like we've all seen, I'm pretty sure, plenty of times in our duels? He activates Talents, he's gonna draw 2, maybe he can pick up the invocation now. Let's see what else he drew. Sets 1, sets 2. It might be it. Yep, it looks like he did not draw Invocation, he did not draw anything of his Dogmatika package, and probably those two set cards are things to try to disrupt your opponent, because if they aren't, then things are not looking well for game 2 either. The Lampsis hits the field, just this card is just enough to give him everything he needs. If those two cards are dead, then probably nothing good is gonna happen. Let's see if any of these cards can do something. So that's a punishment, so that's something. He's gonna deal with that right away. And probably send the Wind Pegasus to the graveyard as well. Or he can set Titanic Light if he wants to get access to another card during the end phase, but this might be risky, because if his opponent has anything else... Oh, he chains Pandemonium. This is really big. Yeah, the hard-drawn fusion spell for the Prankits deck is always really, really strong. Even though it doesn't need it anymore to go off, having it just makes sure that you can do so much more, especially going second. And the Rocket hits the field, and both those Prankits in the graveyard are going to get him 2 more monsters on the field. He chalices the Rocket, which I don't know how much this is going to do for him now, because even though he cannot bring back 2 with Rocket, 2 other monsters are going to hit the field immediately. He sends Pranks, and he gets Dropsies, and Roxy's. Now, he is locked into Prankits with the Pandemonium, so he is not going to be able to set up a Totally Awesome this turn. And he's going for Doodle right away. Drops is going to give him some life and bring out another monster, and Doodle is going to search. Getting him another Pandemonium. And summoning a Fancies. I think this is what makes the Prankits deck really strong. As we've seen other decks, just like the Invoked Dogmatika Shaddoll, it can break, and it can actually end its turn very easily if you have interruptions. But with this deck, if you have the fusion spell, there's nothing that's going to stop you. He tributes the Doodle to get back the Pranks. And the Lampsies. His entire engine is online once again. Let's just hope that Michalis has something up his sleeve, because otherwise this duel is going to end short really soon as well. He activates the Roxys to get another monster. Or maybe not. Summoning the Bark. Running over the Alistair. Which doesn't make too much of a difference, just some damage, because the Alistair on the field in the graveyard makes 0 difference when such an engine is online, because you can just banish it with Invocation. But maybe it does make a difference because he cannot summon Artemis, unless he summons another Alistair. The end phase Pranks is going to get back 3 monsters, draw a card, and he probably has the set Pandemonium he searched with a Doodle, so he can do everything over again and summon the Butler during his opponent's turn. Although I'm not really sure how many cards he has in his hand right now, so I don't know if he can summon Butler. But even if he can't, just getting all those monsters means a lot more pressure. Let's see. He takes some time to make sure he is aware of everything that his opponent can do with those cards. This card does not do anything your own turn, but it's a card that you need to get rid of eventually because it's very similar to Schism. If it gets to stick on the field for too long, then it's really broken. He activates Cyclone. I hope this is during the standby phase, because otherwise he can chain it. And it looks like he activated during the main phase. Yeah, if you activate during the main phase, then this was something that you just need to be familiar with. And he gets to Fusion Summon. This is what happens when prank kits just stop being popular enough, so people do not know what the deck does. So if you don't know, this card can only be activated during the main phase. So if you want to bounce it, destroy it, banish it with anything, you have to do it either in the main phase or the standby, the draw phase or the standby phase. Otherwise, your opponent is going to be able to chain it. And this is what happens. Just this misstep probably cost him this entire duel now, because he got 3 monsters and a battler on the field that can Raigeki twice. And he already has a setup for Totally Awesome next turn because he summoned 2 Dropsies. So if Michalis doesn't deal with those cards, then Totally Awesome is going to hit the field first thing during the next turn. And with Butler on the field, it's not very easy to do. He activates Talents. Now, he could take the Butler, which is a good sign, or he could try to dig deeper, but he decides to take the Butler. Maybe not. We'll see. Yep, he takes the Butler. Let's see what else he can do. Since he decided to take a monster instead of drawing cards, this might mean that he already has in hand what he needs. Summoning an Ash Blossom. It looks like he didn't want to risk it, and he's going straight into Anaconda. And we're going to see Destroyer Phoenix Enforcer, unless this gets interrupted. Let's see if it does. It's gonna send the Destiny Fusion for cost. And it gets Veilered, yeah. This might be it for this duel as well. It looks like Michalis was not able to do what he wanted again this duel. 2 Veilers were enough to stop his entire strategy. He has 1 card left in his hand. What could it possibly be that it gets him back into this game, especially with a Totally being able to be summoned next turn? And this Anaconda is not strong enough to deal with the Dropsies. Sets 1 and passes turn. This does not look good at all. With Destroyer Phoenix Enforcer on the field, he would have had a chance, but now it looks very grim. He's going to overlay for Totally right away, as he should, because this just makes sure that he's going to do whatever he wants with throw this 1 back row on the field, no matter what it is, unless it's a counter trap. Summons the Roxy's, and he's going straight for Link 2. Summoning the Doodle. He's going to get 2 monsters and a search. He's getting too many cards, while the Invoked deck just doesn't get to play at all. Searching the place. He's going to burn for 500, summon a monster, and then summon another monster with Roxy's. He decided not to. Or maybe now, because I don't see a reason why we wouldn't. Yeah, of course. He activates Polymerization. Summoning Weather Washer. He's going to get 2 more monsters. And he attacks for a game. That's it. It looks like the Invoked deck was not able to get going. So, yep. I think that this was a pretty convincing victory for a deck that a lot of people have been sleeping on ever since Meow Moo went to 1. And this is proof that the deck is still really, really strong. So, yep, this is the tournament. Congratulations to Yorgos for picking it up. Really, really convincing victory 2-0. And it was a really fun event. We've seen so many good duels today. And we hope to see you guys next time.